Bien, buenas tardes, gracias a todos por estar aquí, muchas gracias a todos por estar aquí. Me place daros la bienvenida. Hoy iniciamos un programa aquí en Blanquerna, un programa vinculado al libro y vinculado a la Feria del Libro de Madrid. Es la primera vez que se hace y nos place mucho pues empezarlo con esta charla de hoy tan interesante. Abrimos un ciclo que le hemos llamado Revelaciones. Hoy intervendrá la señora Coleman, mañana Carles Porta y el 15 de junio Montseller, todos vinculados a temas de un enorme interés y de gran actualidad. La próxima semana, también vinculados a la Feria del Libro de Madrid, abrimos un ciclo hemos llamado Debutantes, con distintos escritores que serán presentados por personas conocidas de otros ámbitos de la vida artística. Ana Vallbona será presentada y será leída por Manolo García, el cantante, el músico, Albert Forns por Ángel Petisme, Alicia Cops por Cristina Rosenbinge. Cada uno de ellos hará una interactuación con estas personas y tendremos ocasión de conocer a 3 nuevos autores que han escrito sus obras en catalán o en castellano indistintamente. En este caso todos tienen versión en lengua castellana. Y también en esta vinculación con la Feria del Libro se harán distintas sesiones poéticas en la Feria del Retiro con Javier Corcovado, Alberto Manzano y Marina Oroza. Estáis invitados a cada una de estas actividades, que estoy seguro que os presentarán aspectos inéditos de la cultura catalana en este caso. Bien, hoy es un enorme placer tener aquí en Blanquerna a Coleman. Es una de estas personas que con su libro y con su trabajo ha conseguido irrumpir en el análisis, el descubrimiento para todos de lo que significa la cultura digital, lo que significa esta subcultura en la que hay una cultura, si se me permite, vinculada a Internet, pues que todos estamos descubriendo, y creo que está diciendo cosas enormemente importantes, enormemente interesantes para todos. Le quiero agradecer de un modo muy especial pues que haya aceptado acompañarnos y presentar su libro aquí a Blanquerna. Como no, quiero agradecer a Víctor San Pedro, director del Máster de Comunicación, Cultura y Ciudadanía Digital, que colabora en este acto. Le tienen a ustedes va a intervenir, va a ofrecerles unas palabras en un instante, y también a Joaquín y Álvaro Palau, los editores de ARPA, aquí en primera fila, que son las personas pues que han editado este libro que hoy será presentado. La presentación de la autora será materializada por Bernardo Gutiérrez, periodista experto en tecnopolítica y cultura digital. Muchas gracias por estar aquí y acompañarnos. Les doy a todos ustedes las gracias, les emplazo pues a cualquiera de estas iniciativas que antes les he mencionado, y me gustaría pues que Víctor San Pedro tomara la palabra y dijera lo que él crea conveniente. Le paso el micro. Insisto, muchísimas gracias a todos, es un placer tenerles aquí.
Muchas gracias. Hoy en los medios de comunicación un titular dice que 4.500 identidades de policías nacionales han sido puestas en la esfera pública, así como sus datos personales. El autor de este hackeo es Anonymous. Lo hace en nombre de ellos mismos o de ellas mismas, y como respuesta además a la ley Mordaza y como respuesta también al juicio que supuestamente se llevó a cabo contra la cúpula de Anonymous días después de que empezase el 15M en el año 2011 y que ha tenido lugar la semana pasada el fin de dicho juicio. Por lo tanto, estamos ante un tema de enorme actualidad que es abordado por Gabriella Coleman con un rigor científico intachable. Este libro es fruto de años de investigación contrastada con compañeros de la academia y expuesta en numerosos foros académicos. El libro tiene además un debate teórico, no cesa de plantear problemas importantísimos relativos a la transparencia, al activismo, a la privacidad, al anonimato, Y además lo hace con una aproximación muy cercana, muy próxima a quien está estudiando, Anonymous, a ese mundo de activismo, a ese mundo de acción. Porque, como última cosa que quisiera destacar del libro, es que Gabriella tiene la enorme virtud tan escasa en la academia de intentar llegar a un público mayor, y por lo tanto todo esto que les he hablado, que pudiera resultarles muy rollo, muy pesado, demasiado académico, está presentado como si fuese una novela de acción, un thriller y una novela que en el fondo es de espías y también a veces una humorada, con lo cual ese subtítulo de Las 1000 caras de Anonymous, que es el título, que son hackers, activistas, espías y bromistas, es también tomado en serio como estilo para una autora que en muchas páginas te da un repaso muy amplio de lo que son temáticas y problemas fundamentales al hilo de un sujeto y un sujeto nuevo, muy nuevo, una multitud distribuida en una internet que quiere ejercer como contrapoder. Si algo creo que pudiera destacar de las muchas tesis interesantísimas es que es algo que yo creo, o a mí me quedó palmario, como una decantación, ¿no? Como una tesis que se decanta después de haberte leído unas páginas, ¿no? Que el contrapoder, si existe actualmente, tiene que ser un activismo plagado de competencia tecnológica y de ética hacker, ¿no? Eso por lo menos son dos ingredientes fundamentales para que un sujeto actualmente pueda funcionar en este mundo del Big Data y de la minería de datos y de la monitorización constante de Internet, ¿no? Como contrapoder. Moltes gràcies al Centro Blanquerna, es un placer visitarles y un honor ser hospedado por ustedes. A la editorial, que yo creo que está demostrando, ARPA, una valentía, no solo por seguir publicando e intentar hacer algo sostenible, sino con temas y autores y firmas nuevas y de mucho alcance, con mucha ambición, pero creo que con bases bastante sólidas. Y a Gabriella, por supuesto, por la generosidad no solo de su trabajo, sino de todo este esfuerzo, ¿no? Que no es baladí. Es muy fácil apoltronarse en la academia, sobre todo con los méritos que ya tiene acumulados, ¿no? Y muy difícil intentar cambiar de registro y exponerte, bueno, bastante desnuda ante un público que te exige otros códigos y te exige pues otras cosas, ¿no? Gracias, por supuesto, a todas vosotras y vosotros por el interés, y nada, convocaros a que si esto nos llega y queréis todavía más, el sábado haremos otro acto, ya más centrado en quizás las tesis del libro y poder debatir de una manera, pues eso, más próxima. Vamos a decidir un poco el formato luego, pero estamos pensando en algo muy dialógico, algo muy informal, en el que podamos interactuar más con la autora, y eso, pues como esto, es también un acto del máster en Comunicación, Cultura y Ciudadanía Digitales, que se lleva impartiendo 4 cursos en el Mediala Prado, y que es un máster en abierto. Todo lo que hacemos es abierto y de asistencia libre, ¿vale? Muchísimas gracias, y nada, ahora yo creo que es tiempo de entrar ya al libro.
Algo se me escucha, ¿verdad? Vale. Bueno, pues muchas gracias. Buena tarde, un placer estar aquí en el Centro Cultural de la República Catalana. Y bueno, pues cuando la editorial me invitó a presentar a Gabriella Coleman, un libro que ya le seguía la pista de lejos, había leído varios artículos de ella más académicos después de la eclosión de Ocupa y del 15M del 2011 global, pues evidentemente acepté con mucho placer, y bueno, creo que es un momento también espectacular, ¿no? de cambio de era, cambio de ciclo, cambio de paradigmas, un poco el ecosistema de la política en red y de las subjetividades. En primer lugar, voy a intentar ser breve. He hecho como unas ráfagas así personales de mis memorias de Anonymous, que no me acuerdo exactamente, 2006, 2007, estaba yo en Orkut en Brasil cuando no había Facebook, y en 4chan, y yo vi la película de V de Venganza después. Fue todo como algo nada lineal, ¿no? O sea, sería un poco complicado explicar Anonymous de una manera lineal. En mi caso, como memoria subjetiva, caía las unofficial, official rules of Internet, que son unas reglas muy divertidas, muy sarcásticas, que gente en Internet que ya utilizaba el acrónimo Anonymous fue construyendo de forma colectiva. La regla número 3 era Somos Anonymous, la 4 Somos Legión. Era como algo muy potente y muy sarcástico que en la época, hace unos cuantos años, era parte de un fragmento de algo mayor que se estaba configurando. Mi primera memoria potente así de Anonymous fue aquella acción del 2008 contra la Iglesia de la Cientología, Chanology creo que era el canal, cuando ya vimos aquellas máscaras justamente de V de Venganza, de la película inspirada en un cómic de Alan Moore, un montón de gente, todo el mundo sincronizado, ocupando calles contra un proyecto que consideran pseudocientífico, que atacaba las libertades, que había un culto al liderazgo, ¿no? Que justamente Anonymous era algo que todavía no se sabía qué era, pero era radicalmente diferente. Y sobre todo mi primer recuerdo muy potente de Anonymous fue el año 2010, justamente cuando la eclosión de Wikileaks en los grandes medios del mundo y todos los leaks de aquel año. Hubo un momento clave cuando PayPal y las diferentes tarjetas de crédito prohibieron la financiación de Wikileaks, y justamente Anonymous montó la operación PayPal de apoyo a Wikileaks. Entonces era como la gran disrupción del leak, de las filtraciones, Julian Assange. Y yo recuerdo ir así como medio zombie, que es súper interesante. Fuimos a las 4 Torres de Madrid, activistas, gente de la cultura digital, hackers, y yo me encontré una profesora de la facultad, por ejemplo, y la vi como muy flipada diciendo, esto mola mucho. Era una periodista que en la época tendría ya 50 y pico. Esto es increíble, ¿no? Y realmente fue como mi gran memoria de territorio Anonymous, gente con máscaras de Guy Fawkes, ¿no? El icono pop de Hollywood, que precisamente la inteligencia colectiva, esta identidad múltiple, identidad colectiva, como podamos definir Anonymous, que es bastante complejo, le dio absolutamente la vuelta, ¿no? Entonces, bueno, del libro destacaría muchas cosas, ¿no? Por un lado, esta mirada de insider, de estar dentro de una fotografía y conseguir mirarla desde fuera y con una rigurosidad académica, y de hecho a lo largo del libro se ve muy claramente que ella no esconde que es académica. Estoy acá investigando, no escondo mis cartas, pero todo el mundo, por esta especie de reputación online que funciona mucho el mundo de Internet y el hacktivismo así, de lo que uno es, lo que uno hace, la fueron aceptando en casi todos los canales de IRC, listas, en diferentes redes sociales. Entonces es muy interesante esta mirada de la emoción. Hay un relato incluso que ella defiende a lo largo del libro de yo lo relato con emoción y lo relato sin miedo a comunicar algo de que yo estoy dentro de este proceso y lo estoy viendo, y creo que hay una potencia y una emocionalidad colectiva, no lo escondo, pero también con una rigurosidad académica muy interesante, ¿no? También un poco con visión de relato de época, un poco de historiador, diría yo, ¿no? De ser consciente de que estamos viviendo una época muy diferente y donde están cambiando muchísimas cosas. Y ella también pues disecciona desde paradigmas previos, qué sé yo, cita desde Ernst Bloch, El principio esperanza, teorías sociológicas del siglo XX muy sólidas, a todo lo que viene de la cultura digital, de la identidad colectiva, de la remezcla, del quehacer, de los enjambres, ¿no? Entonces, bueno, realmente es un libro en el que yo pienso que hay, para quien conoce Anonymous, quien no lo conoce mucho, para quien seguía por la prensa, para quien merodea un poco o ha merodeado en canales de IRC abiertos, o en 4chan, o habla en Twitter con alguna cuenta de Anonymous, yo pienso que enriquece, aporta muchos detalles y datos muy interesantes. Y por otro lado, también para neófitos y que tienen todos los clichés de Anonymous como un grupo delictivo casi que atentan contra el orden público, también le deja las cosas bastante claras, ¿no? Yo aquí he destacado unas frases del libro me han gustado por su potencial poético y porque pienso que explican bastante de lo que puede ser Anonymous, ¿no? Esta es una identidad colectiva, no es exactamente un grupo, es una identidad colectiva apropiable, es un nombre múltiple que va adaptándose a diferentes subjetividades, rompiendo con las previas, que también hay una mezcla de razas, de culturas, y hay una que me gusta mucho, por ejemplo, Sabu, uno de los líderes, entre comillas, o de las personas que estaban muy involucradas en Nueva York durante Ocupa Wall Street, y antes un puertorriqueño, ¿no?, que ya tuvo el placer de conocerla en persona después de muchísimos chats y diálogos con él. Entonces, por ejemplo, destaca mucho, y voy a leer esta frase, un poco esta multietnicidad y donde cabe todo y donde es más igualitario y equitativo todo por una cuestión de máscaras y de acción colectiva, ¿no? Entonces, por ejemplo, en un momento del libro dice: Anonymous no es un club de los chicos estadounidenses blancos de clase media que todo el mundo imagina. Gracias al ocultamiento de marcadores de identidad personal como etnia, clase y edad, se abren todo tipo de posibilidades. Anonymous actúa para descolonizar hábitos de subjetividad. Es algo que yo creo que es muy interesante, y yo en mi perambular planetario, sobre todo en América Latina, el Anonymous en Río de Janeiro, por ejemplo, tiene máscaras, tiene plumas de indígenas corubo, de la selva amazónica. En México hay un Anonymous hispano con un bigotito mariachi. Hay toda una reinterpretación de subjetividades y culturas. O la 9 de Anón de España, que es como bebe de todo el anarquismo y del pensamiento libertario político de España, ¿no? La 9 de Anón tiene un relato propio encajado en este nombre múltiple de identidad colectiva. Luego me gusta mucho una parte en la que habla, dice que Anonymous se ha convertido en la marca antimarca por antonomasia. Anonymous está animado por un espíritu de desviación humorística, trabaja a través de diversos órganos técnicos, reposa sobre una ética antifamoseo e interviene políticamente de manera asombrosamente rica y variada. Es muy interesante esta cuestión de la antimarca. Yo, por ejemplo, hace 2 años entrevisté a Jeremy Zimmerman, de la Quadrature du Net, un activista criptopunk, amigo de Assange y muy cercano a todo la cultura digital, incluso a Anonymous, y él me dijo una cosa como: Bernardo, es que Anonymous por primera vez hemos conseguido la marca de la gente, the brand for the people, que es una antimarca, también me lo dijo, así como se ha fagocitado, remezclado con una antropofagia, algo que podría haberse quedado en una película de Hollywood pop comercial haciendo caja, V de venganza, y se transforma en otra cosa mucho más irreverente, mucho más imprevisible, y algo que desconcierta justamente a tanto las lógicas de mercado como las prácticas políticas, como las organizaciones, movimientos sociales clásicos, ¿no?, que tienen líderes reconocidos, formatos nada líquidos, más bien sólidos. Entonces yo creo que ahí se acerca un poco a esa definición que hacía Chris Landers, que hizo un reportaje en 2008 de Anonymous, uno de los primeros bien hechos, que él hablaba le preguntaban, bueno, y Anonymous es un grupo, ¿no? La policía detiene a la cúpula. Dice, bueno, Anonymous es un grupo en el sentido en el que una bandada de aves es un grupo. Vuelan en la misma dirección, pero se pueden separar en cualquier momento, ¿no? Entonces pienso que el libro disecciona muy bien el espíritu de Anonymous, tiene una prosa muy cuidadosa, emocional también, o sea, tiene una carga poética potente, pero también como muy rigurosa en las citas científicas, sociológicas. No llega con una mirada previa que cierra la definición de, bueno, Anonymous es esto. Se va viendo un poco al final del libro lo que es o puede ser Anonymous y esta máscara múltiple de la multitud, y deja un poco también abierta esa puerta a la imaginación, que hay otra frase del libro que me parece muy interesante. Exacto, dice: Anonymous es un colectivo críptico que nos obliga a trabajar y a bailar con los restos y fragmentos que nos muestra. Deja mucho a la imaginación. Yo creo que eso describe también mucho lo que es la era de la cultura digital y la interacción o interpretación o actuación del usuario, que ya no está consumiendo de una manera pasiva, sino que puede ser parte activa del proceso en cualquier momento, ¿no? Entonces, en el caso de la máscara de Anonymous, basta ponerse una máscara de Anonymous para decir que eres Anonymous. tan simple como eso, pues, algo que la Guardia Civil o la policía no han entendido desde luego, ¿no? Pues cuando hablan de que se ha detenido a la máscara de Anonymous, ¿no? Entonces pienso que este dejar un espacio a la imaginación, a la posible remezcla del usuario, del lector, del investigador, del académico, del activista, creo que enriquece mucho al libro, ¿verdad? Y bueno, realmente pienso que no quiero extenderme mucho más porque suelo hablar demasiado y creo que ya he pasado los 10 minutos. Creo que Gabriela tiene una presentación magnífica para hacer y que luego creo que es un momento interesante para abrir una rueda de preguntas. Entonces, sin más, damos paso a Gabriella Coleman para presentar el libro. Y bueno, pues...
Gracias. Pues antes que yo empiezo, quiero dar las gracias al Centro Cultural Blanquerna que hizo este evento y todo el mundo, porque hay muchas personas, y especialmente quiero dar las gracias a Víctor y Bernardo que dieron una introducción bien generoso. So that was really beautiful, lo entendí todo. Y pues obviamente puedo hablar un poco de castellano, pero voy a hacer mi conferencia en inglés. Pero cuando es el tiempo para preguntas, por favor, tú puedes hacerlo en castellano también. Pues, okay, I'm going to switch now. But thank you very much. Those introductions were really generous. They were very moving. So today I'm talking about, oops, uh-oh. Hold on. Okay. No. The slides are just going.
It shouldn't make a difference.
All right. I think it's okay now. So I'm here to talk about Anonymous. And I think some people in the audience have seen Anonymous and recognize the imagery. And I have a feeling that some of you in the audience may not know about Anonymous. And so I think it's really important to start with some basics. So what I'm going to do today is talk about some basics, give you a little bit of background for those that may have never heard about them. Then I'm going to talk about the conditions of their birth, because in some ways what's so interesting about Anonymous is that they became a political phenomenon. And in many ways it was never supposed to become an activist or political phenomenon. Then I'm going to talk a little bit about the relationship, very briefly, about Anonymous with other computer hackers who are taking political action today. Some of you might have heard of WikiLeaks and Assange and Snowden. So what is the relationship there? And then finally, I'll be talking about how anonymity functions in Anonymous, because really in some ways this is one of the most interesting parts to Anonymous. All right, so basics. One of the most important principles to Anonymous is that anyone can be and take the name Anonymous. So after this talk, if you are intrigued by Anonymous, you can become anonymous just by saying you're anonymous and by acting and speaking anonymously. And because anyone can take the name, there's many different faces to Anonymous, las mil caras de Anonymous, right? Even though anyone can take the name, over the last couple of years, there have been some pretty consistent tactics, political tactics, that the collective has used. DDoS is one of them. It's a distributed denial of service attack. And basically, it's a big fancy name for something that's actually pretty simple. We all go to the web every day and request a page. If 1,000 people request it, it could handle it. If 5 million people request a page, it's too much traffic and it crashes. And this is one of the key tactics that Anonymous uses. Now, one of the most famous tactics that Anonymous uses is computer hacking. You enter into a system. And obviously this is very risky. It breaks the law. It doesn't actually break the computer like that image shows. And basically Anonymous has hacked governments, corporations. Here in Spain, they've hacked El Corte Inglés. You name it. If Anonymous kind of had an opportunity to hack a powerful government or corporation, they certainly would have liked to. Now, Anonymous also manifests on the streets. In 2011, they participated, as Bernardo mentioned, in every single one of the revolutions of 2011. And this was a bit of a surprise to me, because in many ways I had kind of associated Anonymous with internet activism, even though its birth had to do actually with street protests. But nevertheless, 2011, which saw the Arab Spring, Los Indignados, some big protests in Wisconsin, then Occupy, there was Anonymous providing technological support. Many showed up on the streets, and obviously they also provided propaganda. Now, in the context of North America, and actually many parts of Latin America as well, Anonymous got involved in issues like police brutality, quite famously. And another surprising one was fighting rape culture. And so there are some big operations against rape culture in North America, and actually in the last couple of months, also in Mexico. Anonymous has very much a global kind of character to it. There are Anonymous groups in Macedonia, in India, in France, in the Philippines, and of course here in Spain, where actually there's quite active participation. So there's some of the basics. I'm going to briefly talk about what it was like to study them, but before I do, I'll just briefly mention I obviously wrote this book, and it was a difficult book to write in a little bit, in certain ways, because I was trying to balance between two opposing goals. On the one hand, I wanted to be sociological, I wanted to be rigorous, I wanted to kind of stamp out all sorts of misinformation, but on the other hand, you know, Anonymous is this mythic creature, right? And I wanted not to open the curtain and expose the myth. And so I wanted, in some ways, to accentuate the myth as well. And I don't know if I managed to balance between those two goals, but those were certainly my two motives. But some of you may be asking, if there's so much secrecy, if there's so much anonymity, if people are covered, if they're cloaked, well, how does one even study Anonymous in the first place? And here you'll see a picture of a labyrinth, of a maze, and the maze in many ways is the master metaphor of my book. Well, one of the things I did was I interacted quite a bit with a lot of journalists. And those journalists who don't work on technology, when I told them that I talked to Anonymous, they were really surprised, because most non-tech journalists thought Anonymous were hidden away in the internet equivalent of Tora Bora caves. They thought, like terrorists, they were hiding out and inaccessible. But in many ways, that's completely wrong. It's quite easy to talk to Anonymous directly and every day. And I actually spent a lot of time in the chat rooms, which are easy to get to, and many of them are public as well. And some are secret and some are open, but this is where I spent the majority of my time. I was also a little gopher, which transported journalists from the journalistic world to Anonymous, because some journalists didn't know how to get to Anonymous. So I spent a lot of time chatting with people online, but then at a certain point, people got arrested. A lot of people got arrested. And so I ended up meeting a lot of people in the United States, in Europe. I would go to their trial. I went to prison. After hackers were released from prison, I would also do events like this with them. A picture up there on the left is me with 4 hackers from Ireland and the UK at a play. There was a play about Anonymous in England, and this was a panel about the play. So that's a little bit about how I studied them. But now I kind of want to return to Anonymous and how they came into being. Because what I think is so fascinating is that in some ways Anonymous was a historical accident. Because again, the name today is really identified with politics, with activism, with changing the world, with social justice. But the early history of Anonymous was quite different. For those that don't hang out on the internet all that often, there's something called internet trolling. And it's a form of pranking, joking, sometimes harassment, sometimes it's funny, and sometimes it's really terrifying. And Anonymous, between 2003 and 4 and 2008, was almost exclusively used to coordinate pranking and trolling campaigns. And in their own words, they engaged in internet motherfuckery, which is, I think, very accurate English word that's a little bit hard to translate into other languages. In Spanish, la mala leche del internet is what was picked at a debate as to whether there was maybe better words or not. But nevertheless, the English word, I think, translates quite well. And this is what Anonymous was known for. And they had a humor philosophy, which is not exclusive to Anonymous, which is they did it for their own amusement. The lulz is an esoteric word that means laugh out loud, but a kind of darker form of humor. And Anonymous was, in fact, so famous for being pranksters, for harassing people, that Fox News, which is America's troll news network, called Anonymous the internet hate machine. And Anonymous actually, ironically but fully, embraced the name. This is before they became activists. They're like, yeah, we do spread hate. We are the internet hate machine, right? So then what happened? What happened to kind of transform the internet hate machine to the internet activist machine? Well, Tom Cruise is the person that we have to thank. Thank you, Tom Cruise. And the reason why we have to thank him is because he is a very famous member of the Church of Scientology. Does Madrid have a Church of Scientology?
Yes.
Yeah. Very close. We can go afterwards and see how many Thetans are colonizing our body. So what's so interesting is he's a member of the Church of Scientology. And people who were critics of the church and ex-members of the church took a video that was only meant for internal church consumption and leaked it to journalists. And they leaked it anonymously, as little a anonymous. And this video, I really recommend it. I like to watch it because it makes me laugh. And it was posted on the internet and spread like wildfire. And Scientology likes to sue people if they post their material. And so they basically threatened a bunch of journalists with a big fat lawsuit if they did not take down the video. Well, Anonymous, the trolls, the pranksters, thought, well, you're not going to censor this hilarious video that we love to watch. We are going to attack the Church of Scientology. And basically what they did was engage in what I still think of one of their most important trolling campaigns ever. So they hacked the Church of Scientology. They did a lot of distributed denial of service attacks. They sent hundreds of unpaid pizzas to Scientology churches. Data collection and advertising has been potentially creepy, but not actually creepy, but this example is actually creepy. So this is a good one. And I'm just gonna quote from the article. Straight Out of Compton is a movie about a rap group, and it's an American movie. If you saw a trailer for Straight Out of Compton, the movie, on Facebook, it was targeted at you based on your race, or at least based on what Facebook thinks is your race. People identified by the company as white, black, or Hispanic were shown different versions of the trailer. This is part of Facebook's new ethnic affiliation marketing, which effectively resembles racial profiling with a big data advertising twist. So basically, anything that social media platforms think you should be seeing or liking, it will cater to those sorts of preferences. And again, what I find so interesting about Anonymous is that it's this domain where you can't, first of all, harvest data to understand Anonymous, much less control it, right? And I think that is becoming a little bit more, it's becoming less common today, so it's incredibly important. Now, another dimension to anonymity has to do with psychological questions. What is it like to participate online when you can't meet others? Now, some people in Anonymous do meet other people. They're not breaking the law, so they get together in cities, they meet each other, they marry each other, they have kids with each other. You know, these things happen. But if you break the law, it's a terrible idea to meet anyone because it makes you very susceptible to capture. And so there's a very big psychological burden to anonymous interaction among those who engage in law breaking. I kind of like this picture, which captures what it's like to be online all the time and share your passions with others, but never actually be able to meet others. And I'm going to now provide a quote from someone in Anonymous who was never caught. He was a hacker. We used to talk a lot. He has since gone dark. I don't know where he is, and this is good for his protection. But one day he told me this. He says, "The hardest to me is the silence. When we have trouble and stress, unlike family or work tensions, there's no one to talk to, no friends who understand or who I'd trust with it. The advantage is Anons can resurrect." By this he means maybe he's back now with a different nickname, so I don't know who he is, right? And then he told me, "For you, I will always keep following Biella." That's me. There's no nick changes for you. So for some people, it was too much of a burden to keep your offline life separate, and people revealed stuff about themselves, and it was why they got arrested in certain ways. So it's incredibly hard. So people revealed a little bit about themselves. And I mentioned I met people, right? I showed some images about that showed me meeting with people. And I'm glad you mentioned this question of, or you read a passage from the book, right? And the passage in the book is important because it's true. When I tell people, look, I study Anonymous, there really is a picture that comes into people's mind. And it's usually like a nerdy geek, although less sexy than this guy. But that was the only image I could find online. But basically, they think geeky, awkward, white, alienated, and angry, possibly pathological male with no life outside of what the screen provides him. This is really, really the picture that I think when you say, yeah, I study hackers, I study Anonymous, it's like, oh yeah, that pimply white kid I went to school with, he has no life and he's angry now and he's hacking. And you know, there probably is that guy in Anonymous, but many people are not like that. In fact, really the thing that surprised me the most was that I think that there's a lot more diversity to Anonymous, and this was really, really surprising to me. And again, I was able to sort of, you know, get a sense of this because I met people, because people were arrested. And to just give you a really good example, these are some of the hackers that were part of LulzSec, with the exception of one who wasn't part of LulzSec, but he was an alleged hacker. And here we have, first of all, two people who are not white, and that's actually, the ratio is better than many academic departments today, you know? And so you have someone from Iraq, a Puerto Rican, you know, you have like Mr. Super Athlete, a surfer who's like won, you know, prizes because he's such a good surfer. You have someone who was ex-military, who did time in Iraq. And then you had two Irish guys as well, one of whom was a star student at the top university in Ireland, Trinity. And, you know, I really expected people who were much more just like white and middle class, and that's certainly not the case. No, well, okay, among the hackers, none that I know of. But hackers are the minority of Anonymous. And, oh, I wanted to show this picture these are the Spanish Anons who are arrested. And, you know, unless they age poorly, they're not in their 20s or 30s, they're like in their 40s as well. And that's also interesting. Not everyone is just, you know, 15. But when you get outside the outside the technical zone. So the great majority of people in Anonymous are not hackers. They are the minority. They're the minority that gets the majority of the attention, but they're the minority. And here the diversity just completely is accentuated. Roughly, I think there's about 30% women. I can't really put a number, but I know many of them who participate, who play very important organizational roles. I've met professors, computer science professors. I've met Buddhists, queer Anons. There's actually a lot of queer Anons. Anarchists, people who are part of the 1%, as in like really, really wealthy people. There's super athletes. There are people living in trailer parks, working class geeks, janitors, lawyers, ex-journalists, homeless hackers, scientists, and immigrants. And you might be, wondering, why is this? Well, the explanation is actually really simple. In England, for example, I don't know if they followed through with this, but at a certain point they were considering, and I think that they decided to do this, that when you applied for a job for the government, your resume had to anonymize gender, race, and ethnicity. Why? Because when you do that, you happen to hire more qualified and more diverse people. If there are markers of gender and race and ethnicity, people go for people like themselves. It's natural to do that. But if you don't know who lies behind the mask, that just means very different types of people will show up. And I think this is very important, because I think more kind of sectors need to anonymize the job hiring process precisely for this reason. So this was a surprise. All right, I'm heading towards a kind of conclusion. There's a couple more things I want to say. What does anonymity enable politically speaking? I've talked about how it's a burden, it accentuates diversity, there's a strong anti-celebrity ethic, but politically speaking, there's an effect, right? Well, I think if you read a lot of criticisms of being anonymous online, it pertains and abides by this equation. You're a normal person, you become anonymous, there's an audience, and then you become, a devil, a mean person, and say terrible things. And this is true, when you're anonymous, people can be mean. How many academics are in the room? Okay, not many, but some. We get reviews, and they're anonymous. So we turn in a journal article, we get anonymous review, and they're often really nasty, Like, for example, one of my friends did a paper on the ancestors of slaves in Guadeloupe who used to have a historical walk through Guadeloupe to commemorate slavery. And the first line was, "This paper walks, but it goes nowhere." And then it became like a lot meaner, right? So this is, true at some level, but I think it also discounts the egalitarianism that can happen with anonymity. And also, crucially, what it enables politically is what Oscar Wilde has said: man is least himself when he talks in his own person. Give him a mask and he'll tell you the truth. And there have been all sorts of really, really important forms of whistleblowing that have happened anonymously. And we're not going to go into them, but this is certainly the case that not everyone wants to spend 30 years in jail, and that's okay. So whistleblow anonymously. And what's so interesting today is that one can use cryptography to talk anonymously. And Julian Assange has actually said cryptography is the ultimate form of nonviolent direct action. And this is basically what I think anonymity and secrecy, which are not quite the same thing, what it enables activists is to be able to speak and act and alter the political landscape. So here I say secrecy affords resource-poor activists like Anonymous an ability to strike against the powerful. It levels the playing field. When used in a limited fashion, cloaking can alter the political landscape for better by creating structural conditions that encourage not only speech, but principled action. And I think that is certainly what has happened with Anonymous. But, and this is really where I am starting to wrap up, what is so fascinating is even though there's all these different faces to anonymity, nevertheless, Anonymous manages to be very visible and invisible at once, right? It's very present, and it's very present precisely because it doesn't just act, it leaves a lot of videos and images wherever it goes, and manifestos. It leaves a lot of marks of itself. And I think what is important is that it's this quality of straddling, on the one hand, mythic and artistic space, and the reality of activists taking risks and taking action that makes the collective so enticing. So if they just made posters, you'd be like, oh, cute posters, you know what I mean? But so what? On the other hand, if they just hacked, but there wasn't like a video to watch or a manifesto, you know, it'd be a little bit harder to kind of comprehend what they're doing. And I think it's incredibly important that they've taken on the Guy Fawkes mask. And the reason why I think it's important is because today, the Guy Fawkes mask is identified with revolution and politics. And this was really important because it gives Anonymous a certain type of brand recognition. And what is also important here is that we're in a bookstore, right? And actually, it was a book in the 1850s that turned Guy Fawkes, who was actually a really, no one liked him in Britain. The British government, for most of its history, portrayed Guy Fawkes as an evil and menacing terrorist. And the 5th of November wasn't a kind of revolutionary day, which it sort of is today in England, but was a day to commemorate the horrible terrorist, right? And in 1850, someone writes a historical novel called Guy Fawkes and the Gunpowder Treason, and it's a romance. I'm actually reading it right now. And basically, this was the first book that took Guy Fawkes and, portrayed him more in a positive way, not just in a negative way. And more than 100 years later, we have Alan Moore, who writes another book, V for Vendetta, and then really transforms this character. He's no longer just like this evil dude, but kind of like a badass, who people start to admire. And then there's this Hollywood film that then takes it to the masses. And this is important because, people discount the role of books and ideas and movies, but they really do have the power to change people's minds. And so Anonymous, taking on this mask, then takes on these positive associations, and it's a way to spread a kind of brand recognition, right? And I think that's important. And it's one of the reasons why I think Anonymous is rarely understood as terrorists, oddly enough, because, again, Guy Fawkes was once understood as a terrorist, but is not anymore. And the final part to this equation is that today, Anonymous is now being picked up by popular film and TV shows, and not just in the English-speaking world, but there's a very popular show called Mr. Robots, which is about a disaffected, mentally ill hacker who nevertheless, is often doing the right thing and is a very interesting character. And there's scenes that come straight out of the Anonymous world, right? And there's also movies. A very, very good movie called Who Am I is a German movie, and it's about a group of hackers, Clay, who are trying to outdo Anonymous, and it's a huge thriller. It's like an excellent movie. And again, there's all these references to hackers and Anonymous. And this is really important because it gives Anonymous and hacktivists visibility, and they tend to be portrayed pretty, they're kind of bathed and portrayed in a positive light. And in the end, I think that, we can't reject popular culture. I think it could be a very interesting medium for spreading ideas, so books, films, and movies. So I'm basically going to end there because I bet there's probably some questions. But I hope now that people have a little bit of a sense of how Anonymous came into being, why they might kind of matter, how they use anonymity, and how even though they kind of rely on secrecy and anonymity, they've become very visible in popular culture because of the art that they create and because of the fact that now a lot of people are taking the motif and ideas and actions and now portraying them in popular culture. So I'll just leave it there. Thank you so much for listening to me.
Bueno, ¿hay alguna pregunta? Tenemos la primera.
Hola. Ahora me tienes como la
No,
traducción.
está bien en castellano.
Ahora que Anonymous ya no tiene tanta relevancia global, sus acciones son más bien, están como desperdigadas alrededor del mundo en núcleos muy locales. ¿Eso no ha hecho que la mayoría de potenciales nuevos reclutas simplemente no se enteren que existe? Y ahora que 4chan es tan visible, ¿ya no es el núcleo para reclutarlos? ¿Cómo funciona ahora esto?
So it's a great question because it is absolutely true that, you know, in 2011 and 2012, Anonymous was so visible and so present. I think the most important positive effect of that is kind of recruitment. You know, a lot of people joined in. And today, again, I still think there's a lot of activity, but because the activity is very dispersed, it's true that recruitment levels are much lower, you know? And I still think, however, okay, I'll maybe talk a little bit about WikiLeaks, actually. So WikiLeaks releases some huge things in 2010. There was collateral murder, Afghanistan logs, and Cablegate. And then in 2011 and much of 12, they were like, the news, the media were like, oh, WikiLeaks is irrelevant. They're not doing any leaks. And actually then they were saying an Anonymous are like the relevant hackers. And I was just like, no way. First of all, there will be others who do the mega leak because of what WikiLeaks did. And WikiLeaks will still be an actor in relationship. And I was just like waiting. I was like, you know, I don't like to predict the future because that's not what we tend to do as social scientists, but when you appear in media, they always ask you the last question. They're like, and what about the future? And then you're like, well, let me take out my crystal ball. It's really hard to tell the future. But sure enough, Snowden comes out with the mega leak. And then a few years later, the Panama Papers, right? And I think it's similar with Anonymous where, you know, there was a few years of this unbelievable generative activity. In some ways that was so exceptional, it will never be met again. But Phineas Fisher, in particular, was the hacker who took what Anonymous did and improved upon it dramatically, you know? I think the hacks against Gamma Group and Hacking Team were incredibly productive. Hacking Team is a notorious company that it sells services and software to dictatorial regimes so that these regimes can spy on journalists and activists. We didn't really have a sense of how they functioned, but now we do. And now they're having trouble surviving. And so I actually think the most important lasting effect is inspiring other hackers to follow in that tradition. And whether it's done by little a Anonymous or big A Anonymous, right? And then related to that, the regional activity is very prolific, you know? Mexico is like unbelievable. I think Spain as well, there's a lot. And so in some ways, there still is a kind of grassroots participatory element, but it has a more regional element. And in some ways, if it continues to last in that regard, I still think it's very powerful. You know, do we need something as big and global as we had before? I'm not sure, you know. But you're absolutely right that there is less kind of recruitment ability because there's less presence. But maybe this is where film and TV take on that role. And I'll finish here. So I've interviewed a lot of hackers not related to Anonymous for my first project, which is on free and open source software like Linux and Mozilla. And I would talk to people and I'd ask them, like, when did you become a hacker or realize you were a hacker? Many, many people answered in one of two ways. I watched the movie War Games, which was a very popular film in the United States from the 1980s. And after people watched the film, they would ask their parents, hey, you know, Mom, Dad, can I get a modem? And they started to like hack, right? And I actually think Mr. Robot and other TVs and films will help generate kind of more hackers and hacktivists.
Otra pregunta.
Hola, tenía una duda que es, he visto una serie de memes entre activistas de Estados Unidos que dicen que le imploran a Anonymous que libere las actas de los discursos que Hillary Clinton dio a Goldman Sachs y que además piden por favor Anonymous libera los 30.000 emails que Hillary Clinton borró de su servidor antes de liberarlos. Entonces, he leído algunas noticias cuya credibilidad no tengo ni idea cuál puede ser, que dicen que hay por lo menos una docena de hackers que tienen los emails de Hillary Clinton y las transcripciones de sus speeches. Y luego, además, decía que uno de ellos era un tal Guccifer que fue capturado por Rusia y que esos emails ahora podrían estar en manos del gobierno ruso, y esto lo vi publicado en Forbes. Entonces, me pregunto si se sabe algo de la veracidad de esa información, porque, quiero decir, no sé qué intencionalidad, si alguien lo tiene, si lo libera ahora, podría destruir a Hillary Clinton en las primarias contra Bernie Sanders, pero si espera que sea nominada, podría hacerlo en un momento en que la destruya frente a Donald Trump, ya en las elecciones generales. Y si los rusos lo tienen y Putin está mucho más por la labor de tener a Trump en la presidencia que a Hillary Clinton, o sea, si tienes contactos, diles que lo liberen ya, que las primarias en California son la semana que viene.
Ya has tardado en pedirlo, David.
Well, so I don't know, but I think your question is interesting because, you know, when I was doing research very actively, I was online talking to dozens of people every day for 5 hours a day, you know? And if I didn't do that, and 7 days a week, yeah, it was kind of like I got a lot of back problems. And if I didn't do that, I couldn't know what was going on, what was true, what was not true, right? And because I'm not so deep anymore in investing that time, I can't say. That's the way that you have to know things. You kind of really have to be in or you have to be out. And this goes back to this anti-algorithm thing, right? I can't just like throw some piece of software at the different chat channels, harvest all the data, and then come up with a prediction. That's the beauty of Anonymous. You don't know. Is that a lie? It could be a lie. They sometimes spread lies because they try to obfuscate things, or because there's just bullshit, or people like conspiracy theory. You know what I mean? I mean, I think there's a desire to have those emails, right? Whether they do or they don't, I think is a very open question. And my sense is probably they don't. I mean, if things are being circulated in the rumor mill, I've never seen anything, I think, that was circulated in the rumor mill that tended to be true. What tends to actually happen is, boom, one day it's like we've just hacked this, like H.B. Gary, here are all the emails, have them. You know what I mean? And it comes about kind of magically. Again, I think there's an exception today with Phineas Fisher, for example. I think he works very carefully over a long period of time because it's not easy to hack a company and get all the data out. It takes, if nothing, a couple of weeks. You know, it's not just like one afternoon of magic hacking or something like that. And so there's obviously planning, but people today who are planning hacks tend to be pretty kind of secretive. But these sorts of rumors, nevertheless, I think point to aspirations and hopes that someone can help. And I think one of the most depressing things related to Anonymous in my research is I get like emails or letters from people in jail, you know, who are just like, I'm in jail because supposedly I murdered this person, but I didn't murder this person. It was the Philadelphia Mafia that put me in jail. Can Anonymous help? You know what I mean? And it's depressing because I have to write back and say, well, no, but here are some legal centers that maybe you can, you know what I mean, go to. Because, as Anonymous likes to say, we're not your personal army. And also, there's such contingencies as to what comes into being. You know, why they hack one place versus another place often has to do with bad security. Like, for example, there's a big, long-standing campaign against Japan because Japan still likes to kill a lot of whales to sell as meat. And there's been a lot of really successful hacking. But Nissan is a Japanese company, but as far as I know, they have nothing to do with whaling. But there was just a vulnerability in the Nissan website. You see what I'm saying? And then you get some attention because it's in Japan. I think that they would prefer to hack the whalers, right? But if they can't get in, they'll just hack whoever they can because of bad security. There's a question there. Whoop. Okay.
Nada, muchas gracias por la presentación. Quería recordar una sección de tu libro en la que cuentas una clase en la universidad donde has invitado a un miembro de Anonymous y está hablando de Anonymous y es una persona muy reflexiva, con un alto nivel teórico y entonces tus alumnos se sorprenden de eso. Esa escena me recuerda, yo también trabajo como antropólogo y me recuerda la situación en la que nosotros nos hemos encontrado en Madrid, donde las personas que tratamos de investigar son tan reflexivas como nosotros, o mucho más, y con altas capacidades teóricas, y que son capaces de generar grandes relatos sobre ellos mismos y sobre sus mundos. Entonces los antropólogos y las antropólogas normalmente se han dedicado a contar la vida de los otros, pero si los otros lo hacen tan bien como tú, ¿cuál es el papel que le resta a una antropóloga, ¿no? Además de escribir un libro, ¿qué otra cosa podemos comenzar a hacer antropólogos, antropólogas y científicos sociales? Que es un debate que yo en Estados Unidos está abierto. Y la segunda cuestión tiene que ver justo con eso, con esto, y es la figura de los hackers. Parece que ha desbordado Internet, y entonces ahí se invoca en muchos dominios, ¿no? Hackers urbanos, que es algo que en Madrid podemos encontrar habitualmente. Entonces el hacker ya no es solo un programador, sino una particular práctica material que está movida por un impulso de liberación. Y entonces quizá, eso tiene que ver con qué papel juega Internet en nuestra sociedad, ¿no? Porque quizá ya no es solo una máquina del odio, ni es solo un espacio para la producción de datos empíricos, como el Big Data, sino es también un lugar donde se está produciendo teoría social. Y no se está produciendo en la universidad, sino que se está produciendo en Internet. Nuevamente nos devuelve la pregunta de qué papel juega la universidad, los académicos y las antropólogas en esta situación.
Well, it's like two major questions that were really great and super related to each other in a lot of ways. And it's a great question because it's like, and you know, the first part of your question is, yeah, studying people who are not only very smart and reflexive, but really like to think about their culture and their history. And so I have friends who study really smart scientists and doctors, like neuroscientists, but they're too busy, you know, trying to change theories about the brain to write kind of manifestos about what they do. You see what I'm saying? So there is something even somewhat particular to hackers in comparison to other groups. Although today, many groups, whether it's a kind of tribe in the Amazon or hackers, are very savvy about their culture, you know what I mean, and engage in kind of cultural representation. So what role, as you asked, does the anthropologist play? I mean, one role just has to do with, the fact that even though there's this great interest in their culture, they archive it, as like Chris Kelty has said, nevertheless, writing a book is a bitch, you know what I mean? And so many people are not doing that. And putting that all together is what we or other academics or non-academics, I think, can contribute. And one of the things I did learn from writing this book is that if we want to change ideas, we do have to write compelling stories. And I do think like academics can do that with academic books as well, right? And sometimes it doesn't always make sense to do that, but it's incredibly important, because if not, we lose out to certain pundits who will do it, you know what I mean, and take up the mind space. So this is something that I think is incredibly important for us to do. But, I think that it's always been the case with anthropologists, but more so today. You are expected to give back something to the communities that you work with, right? And I think that that's always something very difficult to negotiate. And in my case, this is not kind of a general answer to your question. Unfortunately, it's a very particular one. I was very concerned that Anonymous would be portrayed as terrorists, as kind of evil actors. And so I really wanted to make sure that wasn't the case. And that was why I was motivated to kind of write the book in the way that I wrote it. But again, I still think putting everything together is a huge task. And with both projects, a lot of very skeptical geeks and hackers were like, well, what can you say about us? I know about us, because I study us, I follow it. But they were still kind of surprised. And I still think this is also where social theory matters. Like sometimes people get mad that I don't theorize gender very much. And I'm like, but I don't study gender. I can't just come up with something out of the blue. Obviously, I notice some dynamics, but without focusing in on it, reading a lot about it, it's difficult for me to kind of say something intelligent. The other side of the question, I think, is a more interesting one, because the academy is sometimes very resistant to change, and when it tries to change, it does ridiculous things like MOOCs, these massively online courses where we're just going to change all our courses to be on video. I mean, that's ridiculous. That's not helpful, except if it's a chemistry class that's the same class over and over again. And I do think that there's something about hacker worlds in particular, which you're super right, isn't just about programming. It could be about exploring the city. It's a style of politics, right? With XNet really tries to think about how to transform political governance using hacker methodologies, right? And I do think it's incredibly important to change the academy so that we accept and open, both collaboration between academics and non-academics, but honor projects that aren't books, And so people are making stuff, whether it's websites or software in the sciences. A lot of scientists are fighting for software to be considered the equivalent of an article. So you write a piece of software that can be used to discover something. Why shouldn't that piece of software be the equivalent of a peer-reviewed journal, right? And it's actually hackers in the academy who are fighting this fight currently, And I think those in the humanities and social scientists also have to do that. And it's, of course, people who are older, who've been around the institutions quite a bit, who have to do that in certain ways. And this is where I'll end, and maybe we can talk about it later. I actually find people who don't study hackers, when they learn about hackers, tend to be incredibly skeptical of them. They do not like them, They're too white, they're too privileged. Do you see what I'm saying? So why should we pay attention to them? And this is a barrier I encounter all the time. And now I'm trying to do something about it, because I think it's difficult to cross-pollinate some of these ideas. And obviously in media departments, digital media, they're open to this. But in many other places, it's like hackers, they're white and privileged, so let's not listen to them. This is something I encounter quite a bit. Any other questions? Ooh.
Yo aprovecho y te pregunto una.
Okay.
Me parece fantástico la bifurcación que hubo posiblemente en el año 2010 con la insurgencia Wikileaks y sobre todo durante el 2011, el 15M, Occupy Wall Street. O sea, esta politización podía haberse quedado en un grupo de gente haciendo troll y bromas y se politizó de una manera muy potente. ¿Piensas que fue ese momento de Wikileaks y 2011 lo que o ya era previo? O sea, ¿cómo acabó Anonymous siendo lo que?
Yeah. I mean, I think, and this is something I don't do in the book because it would have been a bit of a kind of digression, but I often have thought about that, like what really, you know, there was the protests against Scientology which opened the door. But in some ways, I really think that was an important moment, but that precisely it was the support of WikiLeaks, which was incredibly important just because so many people participated, but then it was the Arab Spring, indignados, that really sealed the deal. I don't know if there's that phrase in Spanish. And the reason why it sealed the deal was due to a couple of things. I mean, 2011 was, first of all, very exciting. You know, sort of just like, wow, this huge protest is followed by this one. And there was a kind of, you know, real sense of hope. And Anonymous kind of intersected with that and seemed to be present in each one. And I think it was also very important because up to that point, and for much of 2011, there was tons of hacking, right? If Anonymous had just like hacked left and right, I think it would have been much, much easier to portray them as cyber terrorists. But the fact that they got involved in Occupy, Arab Spring, and Indignados was incredibly important because all of these movements were incredibly respected. And they were on the cover of magazines all over the world. And there was Anonymous associated with them as well. You see what I'm saying? If they didn't have the associations with those social movements, I think Anonymous could have been associated much more strongly with cyber terrorism. And actually, I just finally have gotten more strong confirmation that law enforcement in the United States was precisely trying to build that narrative, right? And they were successful with the animal rights activists in the United States. It's a very tragic story. I recommend a book called Green is the New Red, which tells the story of how environmentalists became demonized as terrorists. And this was something I very much expected. And their contribution to these social movements prevented that. And I also think secured that path of politicization that happened, but it could have kind of stopped, right? So those social movements were really essential in certain ways. So.
Bueno, me dicen con todo tipo de gestos que bueno, que se acabó la charla magnífica. Thank you very much. Sí,
yeah.
Gracias por todo. Y aprovechen que está acá comprando un libro, ¿no?
Sí, solo
Yeah,
recordaros que el sábado volvemos a reunirnos, si queréis más eso es lo que vamos a decidir ahora con una cerveza, en el más puro estilo de si por la mañana
pero
o por la tarde.
Pero va a ser una discusión.
Es hacer una discusión
sí.
Más, también una vez más aquí será. Te vamos a. ¿Vosotros preferís por la tarde? Porque es algo que estábamos debatiendo. Si por la mañana o por la tarde habría más o menos gente tratándose de un sábado. Podemos hacer una votación aquí muy rápido, muy rápido. ¿Cuántos apuntarían a venir por la mañana el sábado?
No.
¿Y cuántos ya, tú vas a venir de todos. ¿Y cuántos apuntarían por la tarde?
¿Qué es la tarde?
Vale, pues entonces quedamos por la tarde, ¿de acuerdo? Okay. Probablemente, ya probablemente 7 de la tarde. ¿Is that okay?
It's fine with me. I mean,
es para arreglar un poco ya las agendas, ¿vale? Será una vez más aquí, dentro de lo que es las actividades también del máster, ¿vale? Y nada, que os pilléis el libro y que por lo menos os lleváis un garabato de ella. Aquí, va a ser aquí. Va a ser estas jornadas las hacemos aquí gracias a la amabilidad de Blanquerna, ¿vale? A las 7 de la tarde, entonces nos emplazamos aquí ya. No, lo vamos a confirmar en las webs, ¿vale? Tanto en la web de Blanquerna como en la web del cccd.es, ¿vale? Comunicación, Cultura y Ciudadanía Digitales, cccd.es. Os lo anunciamos ahí, ¿vale? Gracias.